This idea for the workshop came about something I remember from a long time ago that Steve Otto had told me. We'd gone someplace when I was first starting out, told stories. Steve, got audience reaction like that. I told a story and you could have heard crickets. And I asked Steve later, what happened? What did I do wrong? And he said, well, you told an inappropriate story. And I immediately flared up defending myself as I did not tell an inappropriate story. I did not use any bad language, any situations, any violence. I did not tell an inappropriate story. And Steve, just being Steve, just let me run down like this. And he said, no, you told a story that was inappropriate for that audience. Then he softened it by saying, you told it well. It's just that the audience wasn't ready for that story. So over the years, I've developed my own methodology, a way to determine what is an appropriate story or inappropriate story for a given audience. My definitions are: an appropriate story is one that meets the needs of the audience and the storyteller. Have you ever tried to tell a story that it's a good story and you feel you must tell it, but you really don't have that inner thing for that story? Didn't meet the needs of the storyteller. Audiences pick up on that. Inappropriate story is one that does not meet the needs of the audience or the storyteller. And by my definition of meet the needs, it's basically saying it's a story that fits the type of program the audience is expecting to hear. The program has been billed as such. It's been billed as a program for families, younger children. Or it's been billed, and I've seen this happen, as a program for adults. And then somebody comes up and tells a little child story where everybody else is told something more fitting with an adult, a more complex theme. It's a story the audience can understand. I'll get into that when I give some examples. I had a humbling experience starting out that I can laugh about now, but at the moment it was like, oh. And it's a story that the storyteller understands and can convey that understanding to the audience. Again, going back to how much have you internalized, how much have you really done the work for that story? And this should sound familiar to everybody because it goes back to that old thing, the storytelling triangle. The relationship of the story to the audience, to the storyteller, and the storyteller back to the story. Some examples. When I first started off, I had a wonderful blessing. My youngest daughter was in second grade. The teacher learned that I was a storyteller just starting out. And I got to go into the classroom every month to practice storytelling, to practice new stories on them, see what worked and didn't work. And by April, I was feeling pretty good about that. I knew what those second graders liked. And then I found the folktale, the Ozark tale. Sometimes it's called Matched Mules. Sometimes it's called Matched Horses. It's basically two brothers not the brightest bulbs in the world, who go off and buy, in my version, a set of horses that are identical. They get them back to the barn. And they say, wait a minute, how can we tell which horse belongs to which one of us if something happens to one? And so they start looking for a difference in the horses. They check the teeth. They check the eyeballs. They check the mane. Yeah, whatever you want to pile on, they do this. They even take the horses to the feed store and weigh them. And sure enough, for a moment, it looked like one horse was going to weigh 2 pounds more than the other. Then the heavier horse removed some weight. Finally, they decided to measure from the left nostril of the horse to the end of the tail. And sure enough, the black horse was a half an inch longer than the white horse. The teacher laughed. I had 26 second graders going. Then finally one raised his hand.
Uh-oh.
Teacher acknowledged him. He stood up, he looked at me, and he said, Mr. Kuntz, that was stupid.
I still don't get it.
We'll explain it to you later.
The horse was half an inch longer than the white horse.
Oh.
The brothers couldn't tell them.
They couldn't tell them apart.
But I did realize after a little while why it was an inappropriate story for second graders. Older elementary, middle school, high school adults like the story because they can see the ridiculousness of it. Second graders are still pretty well concrete, first grade, in their thinking patterns. It was a learning experience for me and one that I can laugh about now. The next time I saw an inappropriate story, thankfully, I was not the person telling the story. It was at Missouri Town, 1855. Jenna sat at the little schoolhouse. My time was up. I got to wander around the grounds, and I knew that Missouri Town had hired other storytellers, and there was one in the barn towards the back. So I wandered over. There was a lady I did not know, not a member of RAPS or anything like that. I'm suspecting her first name started with an S, as in Susan. Who knows who I'm talking about? I suspect because I think, and apparently she had a good crowd there standing up. So apparently the stories were resonating, and then she started into an urban tale. Couple drives up into the mountains. They hear on the radio that the escape maniac, everything. They decide they're going to leave. The car won't start. Yeah, so it's not the hook, it's the other one. Finally, the young man says, I'll go get help. You lock the doors, you stay safe in the car. She's pleading with him not to go. And she's doing a really good job. But I know where this story's going. And I'm thinking, I'm looking around. There are families with 4, 5, 6, even 7-year-olds standing listening to this story. So I'm figuring she's come up with a way to soften the ending. She hadn't. Young man leaves. She locks the doors. She hears a noise, some bumps. And then for the rest of the night, she hears a whoosh, whoosh, whoosh on the roof of the car. Next morning, the police show up. They don't want her, trying to get her not to look, but she looks, and it's her dead boyfriend hanging upside down. His throat had been cut, blood. I considered that an inappropriate story for that audience. And given the reaction of the parents, yes. She told him, well. She told it excellently. It was a chilling story. One of the best renditions of that story I'd ever heard. It wasn't appropriate, in my opinion, for that audience.
You didn't have radio in it's fine.
Yeah, it's inappropriate on a
I
number.
didn't have to tell stories from that period. Then the last one, going back to sometimes no matter what you do, things don't work out. How many people have told stories at a Halloween party for money? Where they paid you? Lady called me up. She offered to pay me for stories, said, how much would you charge? And I thought, and I just tossed out a number because I didn't really, really want to do it. And she said, oh, that's fine. And I had that regret that Steve said he always had when that happened. I didn't ask for enough. But she told me she had a yearly party for her kids and grandkids. And I'm thinking, okay, how old are the grandkids? She said all the grandkids are from late teenage into early 20s. So, of course, all the kids are older. And she wanted scary stories. I thought, okay, I've been around Steve long enough. I can crib some of his scary stories. And I just was nervous about the whole thing. I actually called her up, asked to meet, went over to her house, lived in Gladstone, where I would be standing, went over the stories that I was planning to tell. Things like the red dress, rats in the graveyard, stuff like that. And she said, oh, those would be fine. Night party, I show up. I'm there. She introduced, I'm here to tell them. And she even said, creepy, scary stories. And I started off with my version of Rats in the Graveyard, which I always thought Steve let the person off real easy because the guy had a gun and shot himself. My version, nah, he just hears the rats coming for him. I thought, okay, I did that. And I looked out at this crowd. They looked like the second graders. I got thinking, this is a bit more than they were bargaining for. So did the thing Steve always said, pivot to a different, lighter story, a different type of story, did more humorous ghost stories after that. Turned out my program was an inappropriate program for the night. But fortunately, I was able to recover. What I'm trying to say is most of the time, an inappropriate story can be a good story. I heard Laura Packer when she was living in Kansas City. She had a monthly story swap set up by the Midtown Theater. I can't remember the name, by the Arts Bar. Billed for adults. And it was definitely adult themed stories. They were totally appropriate because that's what the audience was there to listen to. Even though we did have at least one member of the audience lead for some of the stories. What do you do if you think a story may be inappropriate? Well, first of all, listen to your story sense. That's akin to the spidey sense, except I think a story sense is stronger than a spidey sense. If something in your gut is telling you maybe not this story, take a look at it and examine it, given the audience that is supposed to be there. And we all know that that's never a given. Sometimes just the wrong audience shows up and you do have to check. The other thing is ask another storyteller. What do they think? Ask somebody more experienced. Call Joyce. I can give you her telephone number.
On the website.
Yeah, I was gonna say, everybody's got her phone.
Joyce,
That's in several bathrooms.
I need to tell this story for this audience. What do you think? And then go with it. Most of the time it works out. Sometimes it doesn't. And anybody have questions?
I don't have a question, but I've got an example.
Okay, you have an example.
I was at Burr Oak and they wanted scary stories. It was Halloween time. I said, well, what I'll do is I'll do half the program. I'll do what I call my not so scary stories. Second half, we'll let the little ones go and we'll do the scary stuff. Fine. Get through the intermission. This lady comes up, the park ranger came over and she said, there's a lady out in the lobby. And she said, her son's only 8 years old because we build it for 12 and up. She said, her son's only 8 years old, but he loves scary stories. And she said, I said, well, she knows her kid better than I do. You know, I'm not going to tell her she can't. So I'm halfway through the story. She gets up, storms out, goes out to the park ranger and says, how in the world could he tell a story like that to children? You know, and so sometimes it doesn't matter what you do and how much you prepare, there's always going to be one person in that crowd but she was just really irate that her son had to listen to a story like that. And it wasn't that scary of a story.
You also have to say what's fair to the rest of the audience. Is anybody besides, I guess, Joyce and Jim heard Ron Adams tell Enoch? Still the scariest story I have ever heard.
Well, it's not just the story, it's his delivery.
Yes,
of course.
yes, his delivery is
He
fantastic.
told it at Chillicothe at Christmas at a chicken festival in the afternoon, broad daylight. Yeah. And people went back to their room, pulling back curtains, looking under beds. We had a couple, Mimi and Rocky Rockwell, had driven out from Bristol, Virginia, near Jonesboro. Mimi came up to me, a little old lady, and said, I've been going to these storytelling things for over 20 years. That's the first time anybody's creeped me out. And I wanted to hear the story again.
Yeah.
He delivered it so well. And then we found out he was going to do it in St. Charles, Missouri. And yes, Steve and I drove from Kansas City to St. Charles. You know, Steve and scary stories.
Yeah.
He did not need any convincing. Besides the fact if Steve is driving, we would get there 30 minutes faster.
Oh, gee.
Yeah.
Baby, I've
Didn't
got it.
stop signs either.
And they had built it. This is for adults only. Recommended age, minimum 18. And like that. People are filing in. They've got a good crowd. Ron is, warming up. I found out later he memorizes his stories, or at least and he always runs it through his mind. So he is in character. At the last moment, this family shows up with two small 7-8-year-old children. I can hear people saying, no, you really don't want to run. Why they just didn't say, no, this is for the people organizing, didn't just say this is for adults only, but they didn't want to. So the people came in. Ron took one look at it and attempted to soften the story.
Oh, no.
Oh, yes. So it might have been appropriate for those children of that family. That was not appropriate for the rest of the audience who was here because they knew Ron's reputation as a scary storyteller.
He also had a reputation for telling mythological stories.
Yeah.
And he taught a class in high school, mythological stories, and he didn't hold back on those either in high school. And probably today he couldn't tell those stories the way he told those in high school, because a lot of them were love stories, or the gods were chasing other people, or other, so.
Well, that may be why there was a waiting list to get into his classes for an English teacher teaching
Yes.
mythological stories.
Yes.
I mean, kids lined up for that class. They signed up ahead of time. They wanted to learn those stories.
Gladys used to run a festival in Hannibal. And Ron came and told Enoch. And Martin Bergen was a cowboy poet. And after we were at this venue, we all got on a bus to go back. Martin Bergen wouldn't get on the bus when he saw Ron Adams get on the bus.
That's the question I have.
Uh-huh.
You can see early on, when you're just starting the story, you can see that it's going awry. How do you pivot?
What do you mean it's going awry?
You can
That,
tell.
that
You're not
the
hitting the
engagement isn't
audience?
there.
Nobody is paying attention? Well, if that happens to me, I say, well, I guess this isn't hitting the mark. Let's start with another story.
Oh, I like that.
So I don't beat a dead horse.
But you have to have
Reestablishing trust.
confidence in yourself, though, also.
Yes, and you gotta have the material to be able to switch.
Right. As Steve said,
Well, yeah,
does anybody from the Zoom land have questions? I will say Jeff just did something a long time ago that I always wondered how you could do. Jeff would tell Beowulf to kindergartners.
Oh, no.
Apparently he
There it
made it
is.
work.
Not only did it work, they asked for it again. They would listen to it over and over again.
Can you do a part of it?
No, once you do Beowulf, you've got to do the whole thing or it doesn't work. But you can
hear that sometime.
One of the things about kids though, kids like to be scared.
Oh, yeah.
I've told a number of stories, like there's a Eastern European story, the Hoblas, I used to tell in preschool all the time, which is very scary to children. I've had parents just about have conniption fits until the kids start asking to hear it a second and third and fourth time.
Yeah, but now you can't do that.
I think parents
The-
get
the-
upset.
Parents and the teachers guide it, or the the board of the school, they restrict what you can actually tell.
I've had parents get upset. Not the kids. Kids are fine with the original ending to the Three Little Pigs.
What's the original ending?
It's down in the water. They put the lid on. They cook them and eat them.
Well, when he eats the first pig, he eats the second pig, and you can't tell that.
You can't. Kids love it.
I know,
It's
but
a closure for them.
you won't get hard again.
You won't. Yeah, I found that out also.
It's not what the kids want. It's because we're banning books in libraries, and we're banning books in schools now. So.
I don't understand development.
No.
Okay, so going back to this before I close, are there any questions from anybody in Zoom land? No? Any questions here? Then I get to do the quibble. Just remember, everything said was my own opinion, not the opinion of RAPS.